Don't go anywhere. On the way, we're going to have a look at this morning's papers with the barrister, broadcaster and futurist, Andrew Eborn.
Times Radio Early Breakfast.
Good morning, good to have your company. It is 5:18. Now, if you haven't downloaded it yet, the Times app is the best way to discover all the award-winning reporting and commentary from the Times. It's super easy to download, and as a digital subscriber, you'll get full access to our stories, features, interviews and puzzles. Just head to the App Store or Google Play and search for the Times. Well, let's have a look at this morning's front pages, beginning with the Times. Headline is Reeves tells business to prepare for higher taxes. Bosses warn Labour of collateral damage to UK. As we were discussing earlier, you had the government's big international investment summit yesterday. So the Prime Minister and the Chancellor doing their best to woo capital investment into the UK. And yet at the same time, you've got the Chancellor saying, look, I'm sorry, we've got to fix the fiscal position, so some taxes are going to have to rise. And it looks like her tax increase of choice is going to be on employer national insurance. Front of the Telegraph today, weight loss jabs will get Britain working. Streeting to hand obese patients drugs and stop them holding back our economy. We'll talk more about that very shortly. Front of the FT, Reeves signals rise in business taxes as Starmer courts global investors. Same story on the front of The Guardian today. Reeves hints at budget increase in employer national insurance, and also the same story on the front of the Eye. New national insurance hike warning for UK business from Reeves. Well, joining me now to have a further look at today's papers is the barrister, broadcaster and futurist Andrew Eborn. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning, James. Always a joy to join you.
Let's begin with that story about Rachel Reeves and business tax.
Yes.
Does look as if that's going to happen in the budget. The national insurance contributions for employers are going to rise. Is that a good idea? I mean, if Rachel Reeves is in a kind of fiscal corner and she needs to do something to increase revenue, is that the right lever to pull?
It's all about the net result, isn't it? And as I warned during the election campaign, reminding people about Labour's weasel words in their manifesto, just to remind you, Labour will not increase taxes on working people, which is why we will not increase national insurance, the basic, higher or additional rates of income tax or VAT. The key words in that is working people. So, but those who are not sort of working, or those who get their income from elsewhere, or those who are our employers, well, expect them to be taxed. And that's exactly what's going to happen. The people should be asking are the employers themselves, the big companies. And you're finding lots of people are disappearing. People like Charlie Mullins of Pimlico Plumbers fame, and now WeFix, he's coming back and doing that. He said he would leave the country. He has done that. And what happens, James, people have to remember that 1% of the people, the top 1% of the people, have paid 30% of the tax. If you drive them away from this country, the tax burden will, in fact, trickle down and basically hit those working people that Labour was sort of advocating during the election. But your listeners are quite right. They need to look at this sort of side because you need the money in order to pay for various other services. But as I say, it's all about the net result. And whilst we're trying to encourage people to invest in business, and the UK is the greatest place in the world for business, and so it should be. And they're talking about 63 billion worth of deals as a result of these investments. A screaming absence from this summit was obviously Elon Musk, the world's richest man. And I, as you know, have him on his father on my show every single day talking about these things. And he's not a fan of Starmageddon, as he calls it, because there's two things. Is one, they're overtaxing, and also they're over-regulating. We need to encourage innovation. We need to talk to the people that it really hits and get them on side.
I mean, I suppose Rachel Reeves would argue that political and economic stability is more important when it comes to business investment than tax rates. Does she have a point there?
No, it's not about more important. It's both, isn't it? You want political and economic stability, but you also want to make sure that the money goes round. And if, as I say, if you're driving people away, you get zero tax. So you need to make sure that the people you talk to actually are on board on this. And we need to work out how we sort of deal with that. Sir Nicholas Lyons, for example, who's the chairman of the FTSE 100 insurer Phoenix, he warns whenever you think about taxing employers, you're taxing jobs, you're taxing enterprises, you have to look at the potential collateral damage. And that's what we need to look at. I mean, Craig Beaumont, for example, Executive Director at Federation of Small Businesses, and they represent, as you know, about 500,000 small and medium-sized enterprises. He says, look, hiking new costs onto jobs by small employers is simply not what a pro-growth Treasury would do. So all of these people, the experts are sort of saying, she's wrong. So you need to listen to the experts. Britain is fantastic. As you know, I advocate about putting the AI into Britain all of the time in order to encourage these great companies such as Elon Musk and his wonderful travel companies to come to Britain. We need to look at both those economic side and also the regulation side. Make it easy for business.
Let's talk about the story on the front page of the Telegraph. This is really interesting. Weight loss jabs will get Britain working. Unemployed people are going to be given weight loss jabs under government plans to get them back to work. The Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, says the new class of medication can have a monumental impact on obesity and get Britain working. I mean, we've heard so much in recent months and years, Andrew, about these drugs, whether it's Wegovy or Ozempic. Do you think as a way of kind of treating people on the NHS and crucially trying to get people back into work who may be a long-term sick, is this a good idea?
Well, it's interesting. They've announced, as you say, a 280 million investment from Lilly, which is the world's largest pharmaceutical company. It's actually a different brand altogether, and it's called the King Kong of slimming jabs. And basically, it will get people healthier. And I always say that prevention is better than cure. And people who are obese, basically, it costs the NHS an absolute fortune. And it causes heart disease and cancer and type 2 diabetes. And about 40% of the NHS budget is spent on preventable health conditions. So this is one of these preventable health conditions. All a jab, however, does is prevent your hunger, if you like. So as soon as you come off that jab, the hunger returns. And that's the difficulty. It's all about a lifestyle changes. And it's all about diets. You're basically having help with those sort of diets. And you need to educate people about sort of food and healthy eating and so on and so forth. I was a trustee for many years of something called UK Harvest, which was not just about recirculating or redistributing excess food, as we call it, rather than waste, but also educating people about healthy eating, about sort of positive things that they can do. This is certainly part of the armoury for tackling this problem, but it's not the only solution, as I say, because as soon as you stop taking the jab, that hunger is going to return.
I think that's the really key point. It'll be interesting to see how people fare with that. I mean, I know people who are on whether it's Wegovy or Ozempic, but some of these weight loss drugs, and it's really working. I mean, you can just see the weight falling off them, and it makes me think, not that I'm, overweight, but I think most of us probably think, it'd be quite nice if I could shift half a stone or whatever. It does make you think, if this is the direction of travel, and if in future it'll be really easy just to get one of these weight loss drugs over the counter in your local chemist, you think, well, why not?
Well, no, as I say, it's very easy. It's a quick fix. Yeah, it stops you eating. And it's very simple about weight. It's in and out, isn't it? If you burn off enough energy, you burn up those calories. If you don't eat anything at all because you're not hungry, you're going to lose weight. No surprises there. The new name on town, if you like, which they call the King Kong of slimming drugs, is called Mounjaro. So look out for that. That's the new one. They say this is better than all of the other ones with Wegovy and Ozempic and so on and so forth. But Mounjaro is the one they're talking about. And they're going to do this trial. I can guarantee, James, that people will lose weight and people say, hurrah, hurrah, we got more energy and everything else. You put them back in the workforce, they'll be skipping to work every morning. And as soon as they skip to work, they're going to dash out and get those hamburgers at lunchtime and put all the weight back on.
I mean, was it ever thus? It's always the way with diets, isn't it? You lose a bit of weight to begin with, and then you put it all back on again. Let's talk about stag-dos, Andrew,
yes.
because Prague, the Czech capital, is tiring of British stag-do antics. The Czech city has imposed a ban on organised drinking tours between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m, largely seen as a clampdown on us Brits. The deputy mayor of Prague has said the city is seeking a more cultured, wealthier tourist, not one who comes for a short time only to get drunk. I don't know when you were last on a stag do, Andrew. I am of an age where I'm going on quite a few at the moment because a lot of my friends are getting married. Yes. I think they're getting a bit out of control, though, these days, because...
What do you mean they're getting? Of course they're out of control. That's the whole very nature of
But I think they're more kind of outlandish than they used to be, because, I mean, even just the fact that people go abroad now to places such as Prague, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's, 30 years ago, people would just go for a night out in their local town. Now it's a kind of three-day event.
Well, and the thing is, it's cheaper to fly to Prague and go to these various things. That one advertises a strip and steak combo. There's a spicy lesbian show in the mud. There's also an Al Capone dinner, which culminates in the groom's mock arrest. Some of these places, you can get an amazing acting dwarf willing to be tied to a member of the party for an extra dose of madness. I mean, it's a huge, huge business, and they have, in fact, attracted them. But you've got to work out the rest of the people there. As fun as it is for those on the stag do, maybe, it's certainly not fun for anybody who has to witness it if they're not part of that fun things. But places like Amsterdam, Munich and Budapest, Prague, they've all banned these beer bikes you might have seen.
I've been on one.
You've been on one.
I've been on one in Dublin. Yes, we survived. And in fairness, most people in Dublin seem to be relatively okay with it, but I'm sure there were people, because, I mean, I've seen them even in London, and when I look at people on them, you go, oh, you muppets.
Yes. Well, it's all the look at me thing, isn't it? It's like these pedal bikes that you have where they blare out ABBA at ear bleeding volume, and you work on that sort of dancing queen, and off you go. No, it's wonderfully fun for ha if you're on that party, but miserable for anybody else. So over the 2 decades since the Czech Republic joined the EU and budget aviation drove down the cost of flights, Prague has been inundated with these Britons seeking cheap drink and women, is what they say. And basically, whilst they interviewed somebody whilst they're doing an appalling rendition of "Can't Take My Eyes Off of You," and the reality is exactly that. I get it; it's good for the economy, it's good for the people on it, but it's miserable for the rest of us.
Morning to Mike on WhatsApp, who says, James, surely the time restrictions just mean that stag-dos will start at 6 a.m. Requires a bit more discipline, but doable, says Mike. I don't think that's the point, Mike. I don't think they're trying to encourage people to get round this by just starting the festivities first thing in the morning. Very briefly, Andrew, tell us about this story in the Daily Star about sheds.
Yes, it's extraordinary. Famous writers, Rudyard Kipling, Agatha Christie, Roald Dahl, all wrote from their sheds. And apparently what's happening, we've got about 60% of Brits have sheds. Obviously not many people in London necessarily. But what they're saying is this wonderful Star never lets us down for a good story. They say 1 in 3 of us sneak down to the garden to avoid our partner for up to 4 hours at a time. That's what's happening in the sheds. I did all my research, as you know, I present this series called Fake or Fact, because I was surprised at how many sheds there might be. But there are apparently 12 million sheds in the UK. And 1/3 of British men believe their shed has a positive impact on their relationship.
There we go. Andrew, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Great to speak, James.
Andrew Eborn there, barrister, broadcaster and futurist, with a look at today's papers. Good morning. It's James Hanson in for Rosie Wright on Times Radio Early Breakfast. Still to come, with the US presidential election being held just 3 weeks from today. What could the outcome mean for the Middle East? I'll get the thoughts of the former Israeli ambassador to the US. But first, with the latest news, here's Cara Bentley.
Across the UK, on DAB, online and on your smart speaker. This is Times Radio.